Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, it's the post-game podcast from the Timberwolves win over the Lakers on Wednesday night. The Wolves are now 4-0 in the preseason. I have one big takeaway from this one, plus a couple other takeaways and studs and duds, as we always do on the post-game podcast. We'll break it all down here on the show. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Thursday, everybody. Happy Victory Thursday. The Wolves beat the Lakers on Wednesday night. We'll talk all about it here today on the show. First of all, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. Of course, Locked On Wolves is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms, from Apple to Google, Spotify to Odyssey. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find this show. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken with two B's, two E's, C-K-E-N. Also, another reminder, this is, I think, week 2 now. We've had the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. You can watch this show on your Roku or Amazon Fire TV device as part of the Locked On Sports Minnesota app, plus all the other Locked On Minnesota sports podcasts. Completely free, 24/7, available on the app. Again, Roku or Amazon Fire TV, the Locked On Sports Minnesota app. All right. So a couple things here. Well, let's start with the key takeaway for the Wolves win over the Lakers. The game on Wednesday night was the Lakers were basically full strength, likely their regular starting five. Likely the regular starting five played for the Lakers. Obviously not the full game, the typical preseason 25 to 28 minutes, late preseason. But LeBron played and AD played, and obviously Pat Bev and Russell Westbrook and everybody played for the Lakers. The Timberwolves did not have Rudy Gobert. They did not have Karl-Anthony Towns, and they also chose to sit some other veteran rotation guys, Taurean Prince and Jordan McLaughlin. Neither of them played, and they're probably two of the top 9 or 10 guys in the rotation typically for Chris Finch. So, the result of a preseason game doesn't matter. We've talked about this on the show. Everyone knows that. It doesn't really matter if you win. At the same time, the Wolves are 4-0 with really kind of messing with who's available on any given night. Rudy and Cat have yet to play together, which is, they're the two best players on the team, and they haven't shared the floor together in a game, and yet the team's 4-0. In a game like this, when the Wolves virtually led wire to wire, outside of I think it was a 7-0 start to the game for the Lakers, besides that, the Wolves had this game in control. It was never really in doubt whether LeBron and Anthony Davis were on the floor or not. Minnesota had the game in control. And there was this weird sense of calm and comfort, like, hey, we know we're the better team. We'll go about our business. I know it's preseason. But that was really encouraging to me. That's not my number one takeaway. I just wanted to kind of start with that. My number one takeaway is Naz Reid / Luka Garza and the Timberwolves roster crunch, which is not ever what I thought. My last couple key takeaways from these games has been all about the offense and what Finch is running with the offense and some of the defensive, the different coverages they're playing depending on personnel on the floor. This is a very weird takeaway because the two best players, 2 of the 3 best players on the floor for the Wolves in this one were Naz Reid and Luka Garza, and neither one of them I thought was going to be in the top 10 of the Wolves rotation this season. Neither one of them is somebody who we expect to even coming into preseason. I had Naz Reid down for 6 to 8 minutes a game. Maybe once in 5 games he gets a DNP CD because Rudy and Cat both stay out of foul trouble and it's a relatively close game and whatever. But I thought Naz was going to be on the actual fringe of this rotation because Chris Finch even said this preseason. He wants to stagger Towns and Rudy so that one is on the floor virtually at all times, and they share the floor, to start the game a little bit in the middle and then crunch time. That's what Finch said. That's what I've been saying should happen. And I'm not saying that this necessarily changes that, but Naz Reid and Luka Garza, I don't think we can talk about one without the other at this point, really kind of not calls it into question, but makes you stop and think hey, what are the Wolves going to do here? So let's start with Naz. Naz has been phenomenal throughout the preseason. All 4 games, he's been really good. I don't have his preseason averages in front of me because I think that's a weird way to measure it, but he's put up back-to-back 2010 games. And I know the numbers were good in the first 2 games as well. He had 22 and 13 in this one, knocked down 3 threes all in the first half, was pretty good defensively. He had a couple of, I guess he only had 1 block, but I mean, it was a really nice block. That Naz had. He went right at Anthony Davis on both ends of the floor. My biggest knock on Naz, if you're a regular listener to this podcast, you know that I am hard on Naz Reid because I think we can get caught up in the idea that he's this big human that can move fluidly and can knock down threes and can do all these things. And the post moves are so smooth. He's got a bit of a handle. He can pass the ball, but the efficiency is not there from 3. The defense has been really poor over the first couple of seasons of his career, and the rebounding is bad for a center. So I think Naz at times, Wolves fans can get a little too caught up in like, hey, this was a great, and also the fact that he was undrafted free agent signee. It's a great story, a great guy, the whole thing. But the actual on-court impact hasn't always been there. It's been kind of these empty-ish stats, as much as I hate that term at times with Naz when he gets the opportunity to start in place of Towns and different, anytime he gets expanded opportunity to play. But he's rebounding this preseason. And again, preseason caveat, whatever, but that's what we have to go off of, right? Consecutive 2010 games. He had 13 boards in this game, and he was going toe-to-toe with Anthony Davis for much of it. He didn't play power forward like he did the last couple times out. So once next to Rudy, once next to Cat. This was center Naz Reid rebounding the basketball against Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis had 13 of his own rebounds in 27 minutes, but Naz had 13 in 27 minutes. And if you go back and watch, there were possessions where Naz was locking AD up, actually boxing him out. And it's pretty rare you actually see NBA players box out, at least the really good ones. As weird as that sounds, it's usually the bench guys, the role players that are focused on that. And the stars are, getting a lot of times, frankly, easier rebounds, or sometimes it's, that's a whole other, that's a rabbit hole to go down that narrative or that conversation. But Naz was really like locking in and locking up with Anthony Davis, was boxing him out, was getting into him physically. We don't usually see that from Naz Reid. And if Naz Reid's going to rebound and he's going to make the effort defensively, at least, plus usually he's still probably going to play the 4 and be paired with Rudy Gobert, then Naz Reid should play. I mean, like, as hard as I've been on Naz, it's mostly because of the rebounding and the spotty defense. The offense, even though the 3-point shot's just okay, it's there, right? He can do it. We know he has the skill set. It's probably just more a consistent playing time thing. It's the rebounding and the defense. And if he's going to do those things, let's figure out a way to get Naz Reid on the court. He was fantastic in this game. And that's nothing new if you've been watching preseason. The second piece of that is Luka Garza. Luka Garza now has had consecutive, I don't know if dominance the right word, but certainly impressive fourth quarters where he's just played the full fourth quarter, hasn't been part of the rotation, right? Comes in and plays 12 minutes in the fourth. He put up 15 points, including 3 3-pointers in the fourth. Luka Garza did not shoot the 3 well at all last year in the G League or at the pro or in the NBA as a rookie with Detroit, and was spotty as a college player. He wasn't asked to shoot the 3 early in his career at Iowa because it's the Big Ten and you're gigantic and a good rebounder and a great post game, so you don't need to shoot threes. He added it a little as he went on, but he was never he was never a fantastic 3-point shooter. There was never the idea that he had the touch to really be great from 3, but he's been very good from 3 in the preseason. It was 3 of 4 outside the arc in the fourth quarter of this one. Again, 15 and 4, a steal. And no turnovers, only 1 foul in 12 minutes for Luka Garza. The trick here, and I said this before the preseason. I said, hey, Luka Garza is not going to make the team. The Wolves have 15 guys that are under contract, some partially guaranteed. Luka Garza is not going to make the team. And he's an Exhibit 10 guy. So he's essentially a preferred G League player. He gets a bonus to sign it. He'll get a bonus if he stays with the Wolves G League team. It's time to have the conversation. Oh, and the other reason we have to have the conversation is Chris Finch's post-game comment. And this was transcribed by John Krasinski on Twitter. Finch says about Garza, quote, he's the perfect system fit for us. Great acquisition by our front office. He's a guy I think can really grow into our system here. He can stretch the floor and he can score around the basket. That's a great combo. Not a lot of bigs can do that. Now, is he just giving lip service to Luka? Like, hopefully he gets a job when we release him inevitably at the training camp. This sounds more real. Like Chris Finch wants Luka Garza on his team. But there's a problem with that. You already have 4 essentially centers in Rudy, Towns, Naz Reid and Nate Knight, all under at least partially guaranteed contracts. And if I'm not mistaken, I should have pulled this up. I believe Knight's is guaranteed this year. And I believe that I'm gonna see if I can pull it up real quick. And Naz's becomes fully guaranteed in January, if I'm remembering that correctly. Actually, I got it right here. So this isn't just simply okay, well, I guess we'll keep him instead. It's not quite that simple. And so I want to get into a little bit of that. It's probably a topic I'll spend more time on it Friday on like the logistics of it, because I want to focus more on the preseason game. But it's important to consider that, like, is there now all of a sudden a roster crunch? Okay, I was mistaken. So both Nate Knight and Naz Reid become fully guaranteed on January 10th, which is that typical full guarantee date. It's right before teams can start signing players to 10-day contracts. So at that point, Nate Knight and Naz Reid both become fully guaranteed. And there's some other guys too, Jalen Noel, Austin Rivers. So the Wolves could theoretically release somebody and just eat a little bit of cash, and you're not eating the full thing. They're not going to release Naz Reid or Nate Knight. Those guys are NBA players. So what are they going to do? And I'm going to leave that open-ended because I want to focus on this game specifically. But that'll be Friday's show. I want to talk a little bit about all of a sudden what's a roster crunch. What are the options? Is somebody on the block? Could Naz Reid get traded? Could they get something for Nate Knight? I don't think you can trade an Exhibit 10 player, but I guess maybe you could. Is somebody going to give something up for Luka Garza? Probably not, because they would rather force the Wolves to make that decision. And if Garza hits free agency, or if somebody comes along and would rather, Luka Garza could go to the G League and then get signed away by another team. The Wolves had Exhibit 10 guys do that in the past. Tyler Cook, a couple of years ago, he was an Exhibit 10 guy in the G League, and another team came and signed him away from the Iowa Wolves. And you lose your bonus, but you're also getting an NBA contract at that point. So that's a possibility. That's what I figured would happen all along. But that'll be Friday's show. I want to spend more time on that. I think it's a really interesting thing that I didn't have on my radar as something that might happen this year. So we'll do that tomorrow, Friday's show. Today, I want to continue with takeaways from this one, and we'll do studs and duds. First, though, let's talk about our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. Heading into a big weekend of college football, the Gophers are back in action this weekend, Saturday, after not playing last weekend. They had an open week, and then, of course, NFL football Sunday. BetOnline is the place for all your football betting. As always, they also remain your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Playoff baseball is a ton of fun. That's ongoing. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, additional takeaways from Wednesday night's win over the Lakers. We talked a lot about Naz going right at AD, boxing out. That was basically my number one. I thought this was interesting. Jordan McLaughlin didn't play, and unless I missed it, I don't think there was a reason. I think it's probably just a rest. He played, he was the primary backup point guard for the first several preseason games. So assuming nothing's wrong, this seems to me like it was one of the things I talked about on Wednesday's show. On this show, I said we have to watch what the Wolves do with backup point guard. Like who is the third point guard in the event that McLaughlin or Russell, say Russell gets into foul trouble early, McLaughlin needs a rest, or they're both in foul trouble, or one of them misses a game due to injury or illness. Who's the next man up there? Is it Austin Rivers? Is it Jalen Noel? Is it Bryn Forbes? And in this game, the answer is a mix of those, and they all got the opportunity to run offense. We saw a lot of Austin Rivers handling like he did at the end of the game on Sunday when they beat the Clippers. Saw a lot of that. Wendell Moore actually got some opportunities. I think if they truly were in a situation where one of those guys misses extended time, I think Wendell Moore Jr. might actually be the de facto quote unquote third point guard. He's not a point guard, but it's a role that he can play. He initiated some offense at Duke, and he, is kind of one of those wings that has size, but also ability to pass and read defenses. Obviously a rookie late first round pick. There's going to be a learning curve there. So they're giving him the chance to do it in preseason, and he's done it okay. It's been mixed results for sure. We saw a lot of Austin Rivers initiating. I think he may be the big spot. We need a guy who can initiate that's been there. Austin Rivers is the guy. I think less so Bryn Forbes. He's still really more of a catch and shoot. I know he's played some point guard in the past, but he's more of a catch and shoot guy. Jalen Noel was very high usage in the first half. First off the ball playing with D'Lo, and then he played some minutes where he was essentially the point guard and looked okay. It wasn't Jalen's best game, but we saw him do it last year in a pinch and do a pretty good job initiating for the Wolves. So Jalen Noel and Austin Rivers, I think, are the current options. I think Forbes really isn't the third point guard, and then Wendell Moore Jr. maybe further down the road. But it was interesting to see the Wolves kind of alternate some possessions there, see who Finch was handing the keys of the offense to. I think our answer is a combination of Austin Rivers and Jalen Noel here moving forward as the I guess de facto third point guard. Also, the defense for the Wolves was a little spotty early in the game. The Lakers were just missing some open shots. They missed like 14 consecutive threes at one point. LA did. But the defense was really good in the third quarter. And it was almost like Finch went into the locker room and said, hey, starters, you're not going to play that much in the second half. Give me some good minutes in the third defensively. And that's exactly what happened. Anthony Edwards got some deflections. Jaden McDaniels was good. Naz had a big block. McDaniels had a nice block at the rim. The Wolves really kind of locked in defensively, got themselves some transition opportunities. It was almost, they weren't playing a blitz coverage like they did last year, but it was more reminiscent of last year's defense, more of a regular season type aggression and passion on that end of the floor. The offense was rough in the third quarter, though. Even with some of those easier opportunities, the Wolves they were actually outscored 26-25 in the third quarter. They just, there were some opportunities that they messed up offensively. The transition offense has been a little rough around the edges, as to be expected in preseason, but that's going to be a big part of this team, is getting those easy open floor buckets. Even though they don't have like a ton of athletes, they have Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards, and D'Lo loves pushing pace. I thought the decision making was generally good. Again, it was just a little rough around the edges, some missed shots that should have been made. But the defense for the second straight game really kind of turned up at one point. It was just obvious that they were challenged to get into the body of the offensive players and get into the gaps, in transition, and make things a little bit more difficult for the Lakers. And they did that in the third quarter. My last takeaway is Jaden McDaniels' aggression in this game on offense. And it was almost reminiscent of like Summer League last year, when the Wolves explicitly said, like, hey, Jaden, we want to see you be aggressive, put the ball on the floor, find some teammates, initiate some offense on, secondary reactions within the half court offense. Not bringing the ball up the floor initiation, but like, hey, swing the ball to Jaden. Jaden puts the ball on the floor, finds a teammate, that sort of a thing. And he did okay in this game doing that. He had 11 points, was only 4 of 11 shooting, 1 of 4 from outside the arc. It was a up and down game for him, but he was aggressive. And I think that's really important. He made a couple of tough shots, kind of off the dribble, mid-range floater type buckets. Again, I mentioned his block was really impressive. I thought he was good defensively, put it on an island sometimes, which is going to happen to him a lot this year. But I liked watching him be aggressive on offense. That's not something we typically see from Jaden McDaniels. It's also not something we need from Jaden McDaniels on a nightly basis, because he's now the fifth option in the starting lineup when they're fully healthy. But this is another, I'm just guessing, but Finch probably said, hey, Jaden, no Cat, no Rudy. These guys are going to play heavy minutes. So you're the third option besides Ant and D'Lo. You're the guy. Kyle Anderson and, Naz obviously had a big game, but Kyle Anderson's, your fifth option. Jaden, you got to step up. You got to do something with the ball in your hands in this game. And he was aggressive and did that. And so be interesting to see when he picks his spots in the regular season. We saw some of this last year where sometimes he would randomly decide to be really aggressive and the shot selection wasn't the best. But if he could pick his spots, and maybe it's in the course of a game, staggering rotations, perhaps he's on the floor with reserves and is asked to do a bit more. Remember last season, he wasn't as good as a starter. And then eventually the Wolves moved McDaniels around Thanksgiving-ish. McDaniels moved to the bench and Jared Vanderbilt started. And Jaden was much more comfortable coming off the bench. Maybe he gets the opportunity. He's the fifth option in the starting lineup. But if over the course of the game, he's on the court with, Taurean Prince and I don't know, whoever else is going to end up being the bench rotation. Jalen Noel is going to get his shots, but Prince and McLaughlin and Naz and whoever else, maybe Jaden becomes the second or third option with the bench unit and does have to be a little more aggressive. So it was good to see him do that in this game. A pretty solid overall game, even if it was a little rough at times for Jaden McDaniels. All right, let's do individual studs and duds here to close out the show. All right, studs and duds. I am going to name a dud this game because I think there was a pretty clear one. The last couple of preseason games, I skipped that portion, but we're going to do that today. With studs, obviously Naz Reid, 22 points, 13 rebounds, 9 of 17 shooting, better than 50% from the field, 3 of 6 outside the arc, 1 of 3 at the line, 2 assists, 1 block, 2 turnovers, 3 fouls in 27 minutes. Just a generally solid, impressive game from Naz. He looked comfortable. There were a couple passes that he made in this game that they weren't highlight reel passes, but they were next level basketball type plays, and not next level like LaMelo Ball or I don't know, maybe insert your favorite passer here. They weren't like crazy passes, but they were next level from where he was, right? Naz was a very okay, pick and roll. I got the ball. I'm going to roll to the basket. I'm going to try and score, or I'm going to pop to the arc and just shoot a three, or I'm going to pump fake and then shoot a three. He's putting the ball on the floor and making decisions now. He made a couple passes where he short rolled, got the ball around the elbow and kicked it to the opposite corner. And just things that we didn't used to see Naz Reid do. They're not mind-blowing things, but they're what he needs to do to crack this rotation on a team with 2 all-star centers with Towns and Rudy and just really good overall depth. Naz Reid's showing the ability to do those things. It's not just the 20 and 10. It's the boxing out that I talked about in the first segment. It's the secondary passes, the second reaction plays where, okay, he's thinking I'm going to shoot. Okay, no, I'll dribble. I'll go to the basket. But then as he's on his way to the basket, he sees a teammate flash in the corner and he gets him the ball. Those are the things that Naz did not used to do. He's doing them now in this preseason. He did that against the Lakers on Wednesday. He was a stud in this game and is making the case for rotation minutes however Finch wants to do it. If it's at the expense of Kyle Anderson, if it's giving Towns and Rudy less minutes early in the season to keep them fresh, whatever it is, we're going to see more Naz, I think, based on this preseason that he's had. Another stud for me, D'Angelo Russell. Really nice game for D'Lo. 15 and 8 overall in just 24 minutes, 5 and 9 shooting, 3 of 5 on 3, 2 of 4 at the line, 3 rebounds, a couple steals and a block, 2 turnovers in 24 minutes to the 8 assists. This was D'Lo picked his spots well. This was a good D'Lo game. Sometimes those transition pull-ups, sometimes those mid-range contested jumpers are really, uncalled for. They're usually pretty much always uncalled for, but sometimes he gets out of control with those. This was a great pick your spots game for D'Lo. He seemed really comfortable. He shot a couple of times. He pulled the trigger out of pick and roll. So he was pulling up behind the screen and shooting threes. They were in rhythm, good shots. Again, 3 of 5 outside the arc. 5 of his 9 shot attempts were threes. This was just a really solid game. And you extrapolate this 24 minutes, call it 30-32, and you're looking at a 2010 game for D'Lo, probably about 20 points. He had 15 and 8 in 24 minutes. So if he plays a longer game, this is a 2010 game for D'Lo. The 8 assists in 24 minutes is phenomenal. Again, I talked about this on Wednesday's show. Or I guess it might have been Tuesday, predictions for this year that D'Lo would break last year's career high assists per game, and also that the assist rate would go up because the assist rate actually dipped last year. I think it goes up playing with Rudy, and there's some chemistry with Naz with D'Lo as well. This was just a well-rounded D'Angelo Russell game, competitive, and hopefully a sign of things to come for the regular season. My third stud for this game, it has to be Luka Garza based on the fourth quarter performance. We talked about him a little bit already. We'll talk more about him on Friday. 15 and 4 in 12 minutes, 5 and 9 shooting, knocked down 3 threes on 4 attempts, and also nailed a couple of free throws, had a steal. A good game from Luka Garza, and he's going to try and play his way onto the roster yet. We'll see how that works. And again, we'll talk about it on Friday. Decent games from Jaden. We talked about him. He played pretty well. Decent from Jalen Noel, a very high usage game for him. He was second on the team in field goal attempts. Jalen was in 23 minutes. I don't know. I mean, there were some moments where he had some ill-advised shots, especially in the first half, but generally a good game from Jalen as well. Those guys are just kind of notable performances, not really studs or duds. My lone dud in this game is going to have to be Ant. Just a rough game. It happens. I mean, he did have 5 assists, which was nice to see. And also the aggressiveness on the boards wasn't as much against the Clippers Sunday. I think that kind of dipped a little bit, but a couple games ago, he had double-digit rebounds. It was one of my key takeaways from I don't remember who they played, but it might have been the other Lakers game a couple games ago. But Ant was aggressive on the glass again, which was a positive, but he shot just 2 of 12, had a couple of turnovers in 26 minutes. 1 of 4 outside the arc, no free throw attempts, didn't get aggressive going to the basket. He did have one really nice reverse where he kind of double clutched and reversed on the right side of the basket. That was a nice play at the rim. Probably could have gotten a foul call or two in there and gotten to the line, but didn't. So 5 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, but just 2 of 12 shooting. And there were some spotty defensive moments, although he locked in on LeBron a couple of times. He had one real nice strip of LeBron in the third quarter, I think it was. So not a true like horrific dud performance, but 2 of 12 is not what you want from a shooting perspective. So I guess I'm still running into form in terms of duds. It's the first time I've named a dud so far this season. So I had to dip my toe in. One more preseason game to go, and then we'll get into typically 3 studs, 2 duds during the regular season. So we'll give it to Ant for this one. But again, he had some good moments as well. That's all on this one. The Wolves have 1 preseason game remaining, and then the regular season starts on Tuesday, believe it or not. The last preseason game is that home game Friday night against the Nets. Rudy and Kat are both supposed to play in that game. I don't believe we'll be doing a post-game podcast following that game, but it will be the focus of Monday's show. And then the plan would be also early next week, either also on Monday or perhaps on Tuesday. I got to do my season preview or my season projections podcast where I'm going to give my Wolves win total projection, their standings projection. I'll project the finish of the Western Conference, might throw in a few other team over-unders based on the win total lines at BetOnline. So that'll be probably Tuesday's show. And then along with that, a quick preview of the matchup for Tuesday night's game against Oklahoma City. So a ton to get to here in the next few days. And we're only 5 days away from regular season Timberwolves basketball. So, it's all upcoming. I mean, get excited. We're here. So, Friday, again, we'll talk Luka, we'll talk Naz, might hit a couple season preview type things as well. So make sure that you come back for Friday's show. A big thank you to those of you that do make Locked On Wolves your first listen each and every day. A reminder that you can find this podcast anywhere. It's free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can also follow on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. And a reminder to grab the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on either Roku or Amazon Fire TV. You can watch Locked On Wolves and all of your favorite Locked On Sports podcasts, Locked On Minnesota podcasts. And again, 24/7, absolutely free. Download the Locked On Sports Minnesota app today on iTunes or Amazon Fire TV. Of course, Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Now, for your second listen, go listen to the Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview 2022. It's a 6-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the season. The local team experts and the NBA insiders of the Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey all combined into one alt preview. Yours truly is on the Teams on the Rise episode. There's, again, episodes. Go search for Ultimate Pro NBA Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.